put my elbows in this place, you know, because. Kilos, which obviously, you know, will slow the car down. But yes, they'll all have pre-fit them in the factory before we got out here weeks ago.
And we know that drivers don't like this part of testing. They obviously like it when the rakes are off, the rigs are gone, and they can just focus on driving rather than having to worry about this extra weight in the car. Well,
I think that's because they're doing constant speed runs. Obviously, the team need to know. They'll send the car out and do, okay, fast as you can. But it helps if you can do a constant speed, especially down the straight with these aero rigs. That means you can say, right, at 150 Ks or 100 miles an hour, whatever you want to say, the air is doing this. And then they can scale it up or down from there.
Well, there you go. From our garden centre back to the commentary box.
Thank you very much. Those constant speed runs are exactly the nightmare that you have. We've just seen Sergio Perez do that on the back straight, so he's never really getting above about 150, 180 kilometres an hour, just in maximum fifth gear. Now back to Pierre Gasly, he's got a time on the board at 1 minute 37.7, a very slow time, but he's done 3 laps. So every lap that you do in these temperatures, without ever being able to lean on the tyres, because you're going so slowly on the straights as well, the tyres just cool down and cool down and cool down until we see that moment at turn 9 where he's just got no grip. And it's because he's just doing those constant speed runs with the aero rakes on, the grip goes, and he has a spin.
Very interesting to see the positioning of the rake on that Mercedes. A lot of intrigue yesterday, as Ted was discussing on the broadcast, and you guys were as well, over the rear suspension and how much that has changed on the Mercedes this year to put the rake there, obviously checking airflow towards that rear suspension and how it's hitting it. So yeah, Mercedes getting their homework done, and a key word that Ted used there, correlation. It was, of course, a massive issue for Haas last year between the data they were seeing on their computers back at the factory, the data they were seeing on the wind tunnel and on CFD, and what they were actually seeing on track. The two didn't add up, and it's what caused them such a headache for so much of the year.
Just watching Lewis go through the start procedure there and checking a few things on the steering wheel as he did so.
See how oddly he holds the wheel when he does the start as well, with the left hand coming right over the top, presumably to try and get a good clutch drop position. So he's wedging his fingers in. When he drops the clutch, it lands to the same point all the time, which is crucial in having a good consistent start. Different drivers use different methods, but it's all about the clutch drop and the throttle release. You drop the clutch from having it fully in, one clutch now, because the rules have changed over time, to make it a bit harder the starts for the drivers. But yeah, it's all about dropping it to the exact right percentage, and the travel on the clutch paddle is minimal, so that is so difficult. That's probably why we saw Lewis holding the wheel in a strange manner.
Look at Julian, talk us through this.
So the left hand right up there, the right hand's in a normal place. He's getting the
you can see the movement in his fingers. Just very slight movement in those left fingers as the clutch drop.
Yeah, exactly. So he's then just releasing it to that point, and then he can release it fully. If you dump the clutch completely, you'll get anti-stall, the revs will just plummet, or you'll get a load of wheel spin. It won't work. So you have to drop it to the bite point, and that's where just a really subtle movement of the fingers will allow the clutch to go from fully in to where he hopes is bang on, around 45–50%, but it's so sensitive. And all the while holding the throttle on a very steady rate, because if you suddenly go on the gas or come off it, then you've got the same problem, an anti-stall or a big wheel spin.
173 laps for Mercedes yesterday. Hamilton already has 10 under his belt in the opening stages of day number 2. Just running through the order of everyone running this morning. Kimi Raikkonen is in the Alfa Romeo. Then we've got Alexander Albon, also Sergio Perez, Romain Grosjean, Lando Norris. Kimi Raikkonen will be in the car, but isn't at the moment. Lewis Hamilton, who you've already seen with the practice start. Daniel Ricciardo in at Renault. George Russell, Pierre Gasly, we've already seen his spin. Charles Leclerc continues in the Ferrari. Vettel still yet to run any laps this year.
Due to run this afternoon. He's a bit poorly, apparently. So, yeah, due to do this afternoon. Don't know yet whether he will, if he's still ill.
Yeah,
obviously.
still a TBC on that.
Yeah. We said earlier in the show we were going to talk about Ferrari and their seeming lack of pace yesterday. They were in low power mode and doing race runs. Here we go. Here's Charles back in the car. They were 22 kilometres an hour down in the speed trap.
Enormous.
Enormous. And indicative then that, you know, they're not telling porkies. They are, or they were anyway, running low power runs.
What was slightly concerning for them, I'd say, it's only slightly because it's day one of testing and you can never read too much into testing, but they weren't quick in sector 3 either, and that's where Mercedes were strong. That, of course, was Mercedes' stronghold last year. Bottas blitzed to pole position here. They were miles ahead of the competition. In sector 3, the low-speed performance was really good. That's where they already looked good, and Ferrari, that's where they need to improve this year. Running in low power mode, this is sector 3 that Charles just coming into now. There's very little straight lines, just a short burst up the hill. There's that bit of a twitch, bit of wheel spin as well, quite late in there for Leclerc. But here is not power sensitive at all. It's just corner, 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 low speed. And if you're losing time now, you can't really blame the power mode for this part. Having said that, maybe they'd have been way quicker in the first 2 sectors and they'd still have their deficit in sector 3 and would be status quo from last year. But it doesn't look immediately from the outset that they've made any significant gains in that, but day one of testing, etc., etc.
Yeah, all the disclaimers in there, but it is still Leclerc in the car. Let's go down to Laura Winter, who can give us an update on Sebastian Vettel.
Yes, Dr. Laura checking in here with another medical update on Sebastian Vettel, who of course did not drive yesterday due to flu-like symptoms, a general feeling of being unwell. I've just checked in with Ferrari. They did switch him yesterday, so he was due to drive this morning. He was switched this afternoon to allow maximum time for recovery. He will be driving this afternoon as originally planned. He's no worse. If anything, he's better, and it is all set to plan for Ferrari on day 2 of testing.
Talking of flu-like symptoms,
Nice and upbeat, isn't it?
I
don't know where this is going.
No, well, story yesterday in the British press that McLaren have banned anybody from their motorhome that has been to China within the last 14 days, and that includes F1 journalist Frankie Mao.
Really?
Yeah. The fact that Frankie Mao's in the media centre, obviously, and we're all there, and he's been passed as clear, and we're all allowed in the McLaren motorhome, seems neither here nor there.
Yeah.
But
apparently less of a risk.
Yeah,
less of a risk.
You're less of a risk if you're sitting opposite Frankie than Frankie going in. So yeah, so there's that.
That is very interesting. It'd be interesting to see how the teams deal with that as the season progresses. At the moment, we are down from a 22 to a 21 race calendar because China has been postponed. A lot of talk yesterday about whether it can be slotted in, if it can be rescheduled, or whether we'll have to wait until 2021 before we return to Shanghai.
Is Alex saying that cockpit's a bit tight for him? You see him rubbing his shoulders and moving his upper body a little bit. Maybe saying it's pinching.
He was. He's turned into a diva after 1 year. Unbelievable. Hadn't even run in a Formula 1 car.
Or is it just confidence? He's just got broad.
They were off the pace yesterday, but it looked like they were running heavy. A lot of fuel in there.
Yeah, Charles Leclerc saying that they're trying a slightly different approach to testing last year. Ferrari fundamentally believed they were going to be the fastest car in Melbourne 1 year ago after leaving testing, so I think they're just running their own thing at the moment, and they will want to see those times pick up as we progress. I don't think they'll be too concerned with their 4th position behind the AlphaTauri, behind the Renault, and behind the Racing Point at the moment. We have just over 90 minutes to go to the end of this session. no red flag, no real technical drama. �𝗥𝗡𝗅 Gasly lucky to get it out of the gravel earlier on. Similar spin to Kevin Magnussen. Let's look at some more of your questions from F1 inboxes. George Russell, the F2 champion for 2018, paired with the F2 runner-up from 2019 this year with his teammate Nicholas Latifi. Bound to take it through what is a phenomenal section to go trackside. If you ever find yourself in this part of the world, it is amazing to watch the direction change of any Formula One car. It is maybe not always the best race here, but qualifying here is always a spectacle. And Russell pushing. No spring in his step yesterday, Laura. George Russell, a driver who would have waited all his life to get in Formula One machinery, and Williams going through that difficult time, putting that right yesterday. Big show of intent, but he's in a great mood, and you only get drivers in good moods if they're happy with their car. I think they were very happy with day one yesterday.
I think I'm not alone in saying the entire paddock, the media here, were delighted to see Williams on the track. First out there as the green light went. First thing yesterday morning. They've also smashed their 2019 Spanish Grand Prix qualifying time here.
Yes.
That shows just how much progress has been made. They're well ahead of their 2019 pace at this start of the season.
They are. And it gives George Russell, who was brilliant with us in commentary yesterday, a chance to... he's impressed, and it gives him a chance to get some results to match the reputation that he probably has in the paddock at the moment. He will be desperate just to show what he can do in Formula One after a season, let's be honest, of battling his teammate 1 year ago. So push lap complete for Russell, who put in a 1:18.266 to go fourth in the order. 37 laps now for him, and you can see the improvement in Sector 2 and 3, loving the detail, and on the C3 tyres, so in the middle of the range as well. We won't see the very softest tyres at this stage of testing. They are, as Ted explained to us earlier on, just looking at the figures from the wind tunnel, and they're matching that to what they see on track. That's what they were doing with the aero rakes earlier on. Now, track temperature has completely changed from when we had a green light at the end of the pit lane. Track temperature now up to 18 degrees. It's 11 degrees air temperature. And you can see great view for the fans. That hill is, when it comes to the Grand Prix, completely covered. Confirmation of the conditions that we have weather-wise. Another glorious day as Russell just slows things down, maybe a prep lap, maybe a return. Doesn't look like the AlphaTauri in the background of �𝗥𝗡𝗅 Gasly is going particularly slowly as he gets past into the braking zone, into turn number 10. So Williams looking for a step forward, everyone looking for a step forward. We were remarking earlier, Laura, up here in comms, that everyone seemed to be in a good mood yesterday. Didn't appear to be anyone in a bad mood. Everyone was happy with the running. Everyone was happy with the progress that they made. No red flags. No one obviously on the back foot. Happy Formula One paddock. Who'd have thought it?
It's almost boring, isn't it? We want a bit of drama. No, and that's brilliant to see. And the sun's out, sun's shining. It's the start of a brand new season. I think they're all happy to be here. They're all happy to hit the ground running, and they're all happy to be in very reliable cars as things stand. Commentators curse. We're probably going to see a red flag in the next 10 minutes.
Well, everyone keeps saying this, and still nothing has appeared.
That's why you keep bringing it up, isn't it?
I do.
You want the drama.
Honestly, I would rather have the. Let's just have a look. So, getting word in my ear that Hamilton has made a steering wheel adjustment. Maybe he's getting word in his ear that we're now on board with him. We're going to have to sell them the dummy, and yeah, we're going to have to sell them the dummy, go on board then off board, and see how it all lines up. Hamilton coming around the final corner. We've seen the adjustment being made out of the pits. We've seen the adjustment being made. Oh, there it is. There's the adjustment that everyone's talking about. Steering wheel coming towards him, and marker again. It's happening again. Let's see if it happens under braking. There you see it. That is what everyone is talking about. The steering wheel position moving. Will, it's affecting the front end. Will Buxton back with us in commentary. This is fantastic.
It's great. I've just been chatting to Ted Kravitz about it downstairs. He's decided to give it the name the trombone, the steering wheel.
Classic.
As you can slide it in and out. Either that, or as somebody has just said, Mercedes have managed to develop the world's most expensive game of Bot It. So there's that. But it is, look, it's a definite thing, and I think it's very marked between turns 9 and 10. And when Lewis moves that steering wheel, I want you to watch the front wheels. Watch the angle of the front wheels. So as he moves the wheel, as he, and do you know what, we start talking about it and then he doesn't do it anymore. But as he moves the wheel, the front wheels appear to straighten up. So it could be that the steering wheel and the steering column are in fact attached, you know, at the front, and are, you know, he's almost sort of physically pulling them back, which would give obviously a straight line advantage. The toe of the front tyres, the angle of them straightening up on the straights. Whether that is in fact tied to a drop of ride height. So there you go, you see him pulling back and the front wheels just straightening up as he does so. As he pushes it back in, if you watch the angle, it's difficult in the corner, but they just turn in just bing, slightly there. Fascinating stuff. Is it legal? Is it not legal? Question marks over whether you are changing suspension settings while the car is in movement and thus would be not within parameters. There you go, you see it there, being pushed in. So yeah, big debate.
Just looking at the shot, as nothing obvious there. Great that we saw it on the onboard. There's still a replay. You see moving the steering wheel around, marker coming up on the steering wheel. That is very, very. That's the joy of covering F1 testing, right there. Excellent stuff. Time for a change in the commentary box. You've already heard that Will's back. He's going to be taking over. I'm going to be wandering off and leave you in the capable company of Will Buxton and Laura Winter.
So the Mercedes continuing to circulate around the track. Oh, Sergio Perez has gone top. I haven't seen that. I've been interviewing Christian Horner. I haven't seen any of these times going in, so we have had a change. Perez up top at 17.3, Ricciardo at 17.7 in P2, Pierre Gasly P3, 118.1, then Russell up to P4 ahead of Leclerc, Hamilton, Albon, Grosjean, Raikkonen and Norris, all 10 with numbers on the board.
The only driver yet to take to the track is Sebastian Vettel, but we're expecting to see him this afternoon. Of course, not well yesterday. They switched him and Leclerc today to allow more time for recovery. Sebastian Vettel we're still waiting to see here in 2020.
Yeah, it's not been the best start for him. Obviously, the team having to rejig all of their plans for testing. You know, if Seb's not well this afternoon, indeed, if he's not well tomorrow, and Charles has to do the first 3 days, one would imagine that Seb would have to do the final 3 days of testing.
When I spoke to Ferrari earlier, they said that he was not worse. If anything, he was better. So it seems all is going to plan at Ferrari.
Well, you'd hope so.
That's
you'd have to hope so. Norris then out on track. What have you made of what you've seen down at McLaren? You've been loitering down around the paddock and pits.
I was watching Lando Norris on the Sky show last night, and I've got to say, he is so refreshing as an athlete across any sport, I think. How much he's just willing to be entirely himself on camera, which is a very difficult thing to be, and especially for a young guy coming into a sport where legends are born and he's surrounded by greatness, and he comes in, he's completely himself. He almost forgets he's live. I think he actually does forget he's live on television sometimes, and that's wonderful to see. It's incredibly endearing, I think, for the public and for the fans and the audience as well. Yeah,
it's been a real change, certainly one that I've noticed over recent years. You know, we went through the era of the very sort of anodyne robotic drivers, and everybody said, oh, you know, Formula One, it's just full of these, you know, PR robots. And there has been this seismic shift, really, in how drivers present themselves. Do you think that's down to sort of the proliferation of social media? Is it down to drivers perhaps growing up in an era of the robotic driver and realising that they needed to be different? Is it perhaps a pressure of the sponsors wanting them to be more real and less anodyne? Where do you think it comes from?
I think social media plays a huge part, and that's interesting you picked up on that with Lando Norris, certainly, because he has a huge social following because of his character, because of how willing he is to have fun and joke around and make people laugh. But I saw that pre-season he was saying, yes, I'm going to be myself. Yeah, I'm going to make people laugh. But I don't want to be perceived as a joker who isn't taking things seriously, because the tendency is, if things don't go his way, if he makes a mistake, people say, well, you're just laughing and joking about anyway. And I think he is becoming aware of that. But I think all of us on this side of the microphone say, please don't change who you are, because it's so refreshing.
I think It's interesting because I think that.
Good afternoon and welcome back to pre-season testing live from the circuit of Barcelona, Catalonia. It's day 2 of 3. This is the afternoon session. My name is 𝗥𝗢𝗔𝗟 and I'm joined in the commentary box by Jolyon Palmer to take you through the next couple of hours. I'm not entirely sure how long we're going to be up here, but the running is going to continue once again. We have a green light at the end of the pit lane, and we have a bit of controversy to talk about after quite a lot of running this morning. We've got Lando Norris back out there again. It was Sergio Perez making the best of the running with a 1:17.3, 48 laps. Daniel Ricciardo 1:17.7, 41 laps. And then 𝗥𝗢𝗩𝗘𝗦 in third, 59 laps. Pierre Gasly logged 77. Russell put 71 on the board. Then we had 49 from Charles Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton at 106. And quite a lot of headlines for other reasons as well, which we will get to. And then we have Grosjean with 87, Raikkonen with 65, and Lando Norris, who you're looking at right now, on 49. And didn't set a time lap for a very long time. But Jolyon Palmer, the paddock, well, the press anyway, talking about that the paddock is full of people who are having a lovely time and seeing F1 cars up close, but the press are talking about DAS and something different. It's dual access steering, and it's got the paddock talking about what they've done.
Yeah, it's got the world talking about what they've done. Dual access steering. So, I mean, James Allison and Lewis Hamilton have just been talking to the media, and they didn't really give a lot away apart from the fact they've named it DAS, and they're pretty sure they've spoken to the FIA and it's legal. They don't say what it does, what they're hoping to achieve with it, but they've named it, they like it, and it's there to stay.
And it's given us something to talk about, so we will be forever grateful for them bringing this to day 2 of the test. Hopefully going to bring you some of that press conference later on. As you can see, conditions glorious, certainly where we started the day compared to now. Huge difference. Track temperature 26 degrees now, air temperature is 17.
This is what I don't understand about Barcelona. I know we mentioned earlier climate, weather, temperature, altitude. Why is it so cold in the morning, and then the sun, like in the middle of the day, the sun's been up for ages, and now it's scorchio.
That's
17
terrific.
degrees.
You don't need the coat. You can relax. You came in with your sunnies on.
I'm loving life. This is. I'm getting my vitamin D. This is good stuff. Just Lando Norris enjoying it out on track. Practice start. Here we go. Neutral.
Let's listen in.
Quite a long hold here. What's he going to change on the dash? J10. Not quite sure what that means.
Wait for it. High pressure when we're on board.
So the lights there's pre-start rev lights, and it's all about getting the blue LEDs on the steering wheel to be hovering at around about the right point, and that means Lando's got to find the revs, can be around 10,000 RPM, then he's got to drop the clutch again to that specific place that he'd been told by his engineers, and that seemed pretty sensible for Lando.
Out on his way around the 16 turns of the Circuit of Barcelona, Catalunya. Plenty of fans deposited all round the circuit, and not for a very high price as well. Great way to see loads of Formula One running, and we have had so much running. 3 sessions down now without a single stoppage. We've had cars in the garage, teams have lost time, and we saw earlier on today a spin for Pierre Gasly. We saw issues for 𝗥𝗢𝗩𝗪𝗛 getting in the cockpit of the car, but that's minor stuff considering the amount of laps that we've seen logged. Are you surprised by this? Are you impressed by this?
Almost kind of neither. I'm impressed because this is unprecedented, but also the regs are pretty much the same. So yeah, the main work from the teams has been finding small gains. There's no massive overhauls. We've seen a new nose design on the McLaren, for example. It's gone for that skinnier papaya orange nose, and Renault have copied them. But generally, there's no massive regulation change, which is normally where you find more niggles and issues when you start testing. So I thought there'd be a lot of running, because there already was last year, to be honest. Quite how much? I think Hamilton's 106 laps is huge for Mercedes,
which is to add to their 173 from yesterday as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're on course to break 212 by my calculations. That's unprecedented in pre-season testing, when people started hitting 160 laps a few years ago, and that was like a mind-blowing total. But now they could get more than 200 if 𝗟𝗏𝗪𝗧𝗏, who's going to jump in the car soon, can rack up a similar amount of laps without issue. I mean, they don't need more than 6 days. They need less than 6 days. Just have 3 days of testing, and they've achieved what a few years ago we were achieving in 8.
Yeah, it might be slightly different in a year's time, but
yeah, this is where they cut back massively for next year with all new cars,
and then we're talking about empty track for 8 hours in 1 year's time.
But there'll be a lot of innovation.
Okay, we've been talking about how bulletproof it is, and I'm hearing in my ear that we've got a couple of closed door situations, which is code for there is technical trouble and the floor is off at the bottom. So we will head down there for the first time. And let's do that right now. Let's do that right now. And let's head down to what looks like Red Bull to me. We'll send you downstairs. Or maybe we won't.
Pictures speak 1,000 words.
Thank goodness they do. You can tell it's after lunch. I had way too much. I'm in the food coma already. So looking down there at Renault. So we've got a closed door situation, which means the floor is off at Red Bull. We've got a closed door situation at Renault. Renault, who have already lost time, made headlines with their brand new nose. Lando Norris making up for lost time. Not a huge amount of laps for McLaren. After Sainz's mega total yesterday of 161. So he definitely did his winter training to get all of those in yesterday. So we will see Norris continue on his way. And Norris ahead of a second season after impressing with his attitude as much as his driving. Unlucky with a couple of failures last year. But was he beginning to lose the inter-team battle with Carlos Sainz? I mean, I know it's his rookie season, so we'll take that into account. He won the qualifying head-to-head, but Sainz appeared to have a pace advantage in the race as we got to the back end of last year.
Actually, and qualifying. So Norris, he had a very, very strong rookie season, but about halfway through, I think in Spa, he had a big advantage over Carlos Sainz in the qualifying head-to-head. And then Sainz basically, I think, outqualified him in every single race, bar Brazil at the start from the back, Carlos Sainz. Yeah. And then Abu Dhabi, Lando Norris just picked him to win that qualifying head-to-head. But certainly Sainz had a super strong year last year, and the points total was greater than Lando, who had a lot of bad luck as well. I think it's fair to say, including Spa, where he retired out of 5th place, heading onto the final lap in despair. But I think there's a lot of promise from Lando Norris getting his first laps today in the new McLaren. What's interesting to me is they just seem to get on so well.
Yeah. Do you think that's genuine? It appears to be genuine.
It appears to be, which I've got on well with teammates before.
Who's the teammate you got on best with?
Well, I had 2 in Formula 1, and I got on better with Kevin Magnussen than I did with Nico Hülkenberg.
Right, fair.
But in GP2, I got on very well with Marcus Ericsson. We were teammates for a year, and it was a very fun year. And generally, I got on quite well with my teammates all the time. You work closely together, and if they're like-minded and
not divas,
then it's easy to get on with them. But the amount of banter that Norris and Sainz seem to be having is a lot for Formula 1 drivers, where the intensity of the pressure is so high. Not only that, you get to Formula 1, and the media, us, make it all about the driver head-to-head within the team. They really make the teammate battle more of a thing than I think has ever been in the past. So every single qualifying session, you're looking at Norris v Sainz. You're not looking so much at Norris v Ricciardo in the Renault. It's all about, can you beat your teammate? So considering all that, they've, thankfully for them, have been very even as well. Norris was a rookie last year, which alleviated some of the pressure and the expectation that Sainz probably should beat him over the course of the year. This year, though, he's not a rookie. There's potentially top seats up for grabs at the end of the year. Potentially McLaren can be a top seat for 2021, or maybe even this year, who knows. But I wonder how long they can keep being chums, because at some point, normally you find a boiling point where a little niggle creeps in, and no one's that chummy, surely, as teammates.
You don't
maybe
believe
I'm
it.
cynical. I am cynical.
You don't believe it at all.
I believe it for now.
And maybe if they're arguing over podiums this year, then maybe that's when things start changing.
Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton used to be best
Very
of friends.
Close. Yeah, different when there's a title on the line. Let's hear from Lando Norris, speaking about what could be, for the reasons that we've just mentioned, a difficult second season.
You were incredibly self-critical in your first year in Formula 1. How important was that time over the winter to actually look back over everything that you did in that year and actually give yourself a bit of an easier time over it and appreciate actually what you achieved?
I think I have done. I've appreciated more over this winter what I did. Obviously, we have a lot of the stats, and the guys here work out and know more what was achievable, what wasn't achievable, and and how I should have done basically in my first season, comparing to previous results from different circumstances and everything. So looking at them, then it kind of gave me a bit more confidence. And it's not like everyone here just tries to make me feel good. You know, we want to help each other, and a lot of that is by being serious and being honest, and saying, right, look, you're pretty terrible here, or you're good here, and what I need to and don't need to work on. So it's been very crucial, I'd say, having this time off, and working on these things, which will bring me more lap time, or less lap time, I'd say, less lap time, and yeah, being able to help me achieve more things, basically. So I will still be critical of myself and harsh, and not be happy a lot of times, but I don't think I'll be as bad as last season. I think I have a better balance of being harsh on myself, but at the same time just having more confidence and knowing that I'll be able to improve it and do better next time.
How excited are you about that and about what this season brings? And with that in mind, what's the objective? Is it hanging on to fourth? Is it taking those steps up towards third, fighting for podiums? What do you think you can achieve in your second year in Formula One?
I wouldn't say it's what I think I can achieve. I think Formula One's a guessing game until you get to Australia. Everyone always says it, but it's true. So I think as long as I've worked on the things I know I needed to work on, and as a team we have worked on, and from what we see in the data and aero and everything, things are taking steps forward, but at the same time I'm sure every other team on the grid is taking steps forward as well. So I think if we just focus on ourselves, we don't think about the numbers of being fourth or even third or fifth or whatever. It's just focusing on ourselves, doing the best we can, and hopefully the results will speak for themselves at the end of all of it. So yeah, at this point it's too early to talk numbers and talk positions and points and everything. It's just getting our heads down and keeping our heads down, and seeing how it goes after the first few races.
So he talks about being self-critical there. It's how self-critical are you after your rookie season? Are you looking for the improvements? How do you approach the second season, knowing that you need to move forward? As we get our first glimpse of Sebastian Vettel, he's made his way back in, not in the car yet, but expected to run this afternoon.
He's wearing racing overalls, so I don't think he's doing that for fun. That seems like he's going to get his first chance at driving his 2020 car very shortly. You've got to be so self-critical as a racing driver, full stop, let alone a Formula One driver, because you can never sit back and pat yourself on the back when things are good or bad. You've got to always dig deep and find ways to improve. And when you're a rookie, generally, there's a lot more to improve than when you iron out a lot of your problems, because you're learning so much. So for Lando, he had a really promising rookie season, but you've got to pick up on where can he find the last bit in Q3. Or I think for Lando, sometimes he was looking really, really strong in qualifying, and then more towards the back end of the year, the last lap of Q3, he wouldn't be able to find the last couple of tenths, and that's where the midfielders would close in him. So it's things like that. The race starts were traditionally a weak point for him at the start of the season. First half of the year, he's qualifying really well and would always lose a place or two off the line first lap, and that's where Carlos, his teammate, his race starts were phenomenal. Even if he started behind Lando, every Grand Prix basically was ahead on the first lap. It's areas like that you've got to improve, and that's where, coming into the second season, you've got a bank of experience from 21 races, and you've got to just use that every time you get in the car. Learn something more, be super self-critical, see what your teammates doing better, be honest with yourself, and learn from it. But always coming back in a second season, you have that bit more confidence. You know what it's all about. Testing's no new surprise to you. Melbourne's no new surprise to you, and you can have a bit more confidence and stamp your authority.
Valtteri Bottas out on track and just making a correction coming out at turn 10. So contrast that for a step forward that Lando Norris has to take to a sort of response that you would argue that Sebastian Vettel has to give. Is it a similar sort of process of identifying where it's not perhaps worked in the last couple of years for him, or is it a slightly different thing when you're so experienced?
It's the same. It's exactly the same, because even when you're experienced, then Sebastian Vettel, 4-time world champion, one of the all-time most successful Formula One drivers, Grand Prix wins, pole positions, the rest of it. But in any sport, young talent comes through and they can raise the game. It's the same in tennis, in other sports. You have your Roger Federers that are still out there, but they've got the new Tsitsipas or whoever it is coming through at the time. There's just coming in with new techniques, new methods, new skills that you've not seen before, and you have to raise your game. And Charles Leclerc's done that at Ferrari. He's come in with blinding speed, and Vettel was alongside Raikkonen, ahead, quite comfortable. Raikkonen had a turn of speed and could be a threat at times, but over the season Vettel was quicker and had authority in the team. Leclerc's come in, and there'll be little things that he's doing in terms of driving technique that Sebastian Vettel, when he's behind, he can learn from this. Even as a 4-time world champion, he's got to be self-critical and see if he's 2 tenths behind Charles Leclerc. Don't just say, oh wow, he's really quick, I need to dig deep and find some more time. Look at why he's quick and figure it out. And it's the same for Lewis Hamilton. He didn't always have it easy at the start of last year. Valtteri Bottas started with more pole positions, didn't even finish with more pole positions, and I think Lewis got it back right at the end, didn't he? But Lewis has to dig deep as well at times, and it's just a constant process in Formula 1. If you stand still, other people are learning and you're falling back. And for Vettel, actually, he did a great job at the end of last year, because it looked like it was getting horribly away from him. After Canada, where he could have, should have, would have won the Grand Prix, he had that really poor run up to Monza through the summer months. Leclerc pole, then pole and win, Spa and Monza last year looked the real deal. Meanwhile, Vettel in Monza got a bit stuffed by the team, or Leclerc in qualifying, had that spin on his own, then in rejoining at Ascari, took out Lance Stroll, got a drive-through penalty, and it looked like it was all over for him in terms of his career. Where's his head at? What's going to happen? And he bounced back really, really strongly, and he's got to continue that.
So can he continue that momentum? So many fascinating narratives. Let's bring it back to today rather than looking forward to the season ahead. We've seen some closed doors downstairs, and Ted and Laura can tell us what's going on in the pit lane.
Yes, we are down here in the pit lane, Ted and I, and doors indeed are closed at Renault and Red Bull. Ted, you've been having a chat with a few people. What have we learned?
Yeah, so let's start with Renault, shall we? First of all, just had a word with Marcin Butkowski, the executive director there. It seems that there was some damage over a curb earlier on, so I don't know whether Daniel Ricciardo has been hooning it around here more than he normally does. But in any case, so they did have a damaged floor, so they've got a little repair job to do. They'll manage to do that, he estimates in the next 20 minutes, something like that. So yet again, guys, we see Renault losing a little bit of track time. Yes, it's only testing. I know it doesn't matter. These things do happen. But Renault are going to be down a few laps with maybe 40 minutes missing out of the session, the afternoon session. We're down here at Red Bull. You can also see the screens up here. The good news seems to be that they're just in the throes of putting the car back together after the changes they make in the lunch hour. We heard the Honda engine fire up, haven't we, Laura, just a second ago? It does seem like they're ready to go again. It sounds like they might have a crank in there as well. Of course, they are allowed to put the screens up when they have the floor off. If they've got something they don't want people to see, or they just don't want to get the draft going in, they can just take the floor off when they want and then enable them to put the screens up. So yeah, it seems that they're just finishing the work on the floor is off on the Red Bull, so we have the screens, but nothing more to worry about on that. But yeah, we'll keep across the Renault repairs to that floor. Can happen around here.
Yeah, we saw a few words being exchanged about the curbs earlier on in running, so intriguing if that's what's caused the issue. Kimi Raikkonen's the car on track, heading into another season. Remember, he started in 2001 for Sauber, the team that Alfa Romeo now is, and he is running on the circuit. I can't quite remember if I told you everyone who's running in the afternoon, all the changes. The changes are Sebastian Vettel, Esteban Ocon and Valtteri Bottas. Kimi Raikkonen doing all day in the car, Albon doing all day once he gets back out. Same applies to Perez, to Grosjean, to George Russell and to Pierre Gasly, who had that spin at the start of the day. If you've got any questions at all, hashtag F1 inbox. Funnily enough, Jodin, quite a lot of questions coming in about this DAS, this different steering system that we're seeing from the Mercedes. James Allison not being drawn on whether he thought it was legal. The only thing he said in the press conference, the FIA have known about this for a long time. So It's one of those where it would take a protest from one of the teams to get the FIA to look at it again, but the majority of the questions are coming in for that. One thing that is interesting to note is the size of the Mercedes team and the numbers that they can have, looking at these different innovations, the difference between the capacity of the teams, say compared to an Alfa Romeo, compared to a Mercedes. Huge difference in personnel.
Well, it's the difference. It's the sort of rich and the poor of Formula One, really. But I love the Mercedes innovation. I mean, this is what Formula One's all about. Innovation, as Raikkonen gets a little bit snappy coming out of turn 5. So many drivers still struggling with traction. Rear end grip seems to be at a premium. But yeah, innovation is what Formula One's all about, and this sort of thing is great. Mercedes do have a team that's twice the size, though, of the likes of Alfa Romeo, so they've kind of got twice the brain power to come up with all these things. So I guess you could argue that, but it's still brilliant that within the rules they've come up with this innovation that they won't really say what it does or what they're hoping it does anyway. But yeah, it's good to see. This is also good to see. Sebastian Vettel getting ready.
Yeah, crash helmet on, hands device on, and after a bit of a issue with illness, the start of the test, getting back to what he does best, and he will hope, continuing that momentum that Jordan was talking about, hitting the reset button. And I think we can now hear from the 4-time world champion, Sebastian Vettel, like all of the drivers have been speaking to us a few days ago.
You said you learned a lot last year as a 4-time champion. You know you can't buy experience, it comes with time. How much did you learn last year, and what did you learn specifically in 2019?
Not all that I want to share, but yeah, I think, you know, also looking back, obviously it wasn't I don't know if that makes sense in English, a round year, so it wasn't smooth. I think, you know, there were small hiccups here and there. Obviously we tried lots of things because, you know, we thought there's more in the car than there probably was. We tried to force it, and usually when you force things, then small things go wrong. I think we didn't always run the right setup. We didn't always get everything out of the car. Ultimately, because of that, I tried to force it, you know, in the car, and then small mistakes happened. So, all in all, it wasn't a smooth year, and I'm sure that you know, changing the mindset a little bit and the expectations, will have a strong year this year.
There's huge pressure on you guys last year. There is every year because you're Ferrari and you're Sebastian Vettel, but on Charles and yourself, on Mattia, do you think that as a unit maybe, and you said it yourself, that you all pushed that little bit too hard to try and live up to those expectations? Can you just let this year happen?
It's not that easy, you know, it's a fine line. You always try to obviously get everything out of yourself, the car and so on, and if you perform on the limit, then it's also part of the limit that sometimes you go over, but obviously when you have the absolute confidence and so on, you're more likely to get it right than get it wrong, and I think that was missing last year at certain stages. But also, I think it wasn't you know, disastrous. We still had, you know, second overall in the constructors. In the drivers, both of us fell back at the end, so that was not ideal. But also, you know, it wasn't an ideal season. But I'm sure whoever you ask, apart from the guy who won, you know, it wasn't maybe a perfect year, and there were things that could have gone better. So what you see is the average of the year, and it's, I think, a fair result at the end. But that's done, it's history, and now we start from zero, and hopefully the new car gives us what we need to do it better.
So Vettel there in a reflective mood ahead of a big season for him. Plenty of drivers with a lot to prove this year in new roles. We've already covered the role that Alex Albon's going to have trying to get close to Max Verstappen. Can Max Verstappen build a championship challenge? Can anyone get close to Mercedes? So many different narratives this year. Can Romain Grosjean repay the faith that Haas have shown by re-signing him when half the paddock absolutely would not have done 1 year ago? We've had a question in to hashtag F1 inbox from Nick Marwood, and he has asked, is it better for a team to split drivers each day so both drivers get track time? Which did you prefer, Jody?
The first year I had a day each, And then I literally back-to-backed it because Nico Hülkenberg came into the team in 2017 and he suggested we split the days, but I think mainly because he wanted to reduce workload. It was the new, this generation of car, and he thought 160 laps in a day might be overkill. And to be fair, testament to the drivers, Max Verstappen yesterday doing over 160 on his own. It's supremely physical. This circuit, especially after a couple of months off, is really putting the drivers to the test. So if they've missed a little bit of training, the Grand Prix distance is 66 laps, so they're nearly 3 times that in one day. So it was not without reason that Nico Hülkenberg thought we should probably split up the driving duties a bit. I think I kind of prefer a day to yourself, because you can really get stuck in and there's so much to get through. You keep in the rhythm, and it also helps to not have to change the pedals, do sort of double the install laps as well.
Okay, let's go back down to the pit lane where Laura's about to watch Sebastian Vettel take to the track.
We've just seen Sebastian Vettel heading out on to the track. Of course, he was unwell yesterday, flu-like symptoms. They switched as well today. Charles Leclerc driving this morning, Sebastian Vettel this afternoon, to allow more time for him to recover. He is now heading out on to the track. The 4-time world champion out of contract this season. Much of the pre-season chat about where he could end up, if indeed he will commit his future to Ferrari. But he is now taken to the track for the first time, the last driver to do so here in Barcelona.
A very good point, Laura. Thank you for that. No contract for Sebastian Vettel. His teammate does have a contract for next year. That's a slightly insecure feeling. What would worry me more if I was Sebastian Vettel is that Ferrari announced it over Christmas, which is a time that traditionally in PR you want to sort of almost bury an announcement. You put it out on the 23rd or 24th, and I think Ferrari did.
Yeah. When...
You're not buying that? Your face says you're not buying that,
No,
Johnny.
I'm going to just gloss over that one. That's too much PR trickery for me to get my head around.
Okay.
But maybe you're right. Maybe that's in the sort of journalistic, political world, potentially more.
Yeah.
With your MP's hat on. But when Daniel Ricciardo left Red Bull, as featured in Drive to Survive Series 1, the momentum in Red Bull shifted a lot. Max Verstappen, the previous winter, got the new 4-year mega bucks deal with Red Bull, and Ricciardo didn't. And he was in the exact same position as Sebastian Vettel now. Younger teammate, seen as the real deal, gets the big multi-year deal whilst your contract's up at the end of next year. They're in the same position, and Ferrari has just lumped loads of faith in Leclerc, as Red Bull did with Verstappen. Sure, Red Bull still wanted Daniel Ricciardo to carry on, and Ferrari still say Vettel's our #1 choice for next year, but they haven't put pen to paper, and there must be a slight sting in that for Vettel to know. It's not probably surprising, because Leclerc beat him in the championship last year. Leclerc's young with a lot of potential in front of him. But there still must be a slight sting and a feeling that Vettel's sort of falling down the pecking order slightly at Ferrari from being the #1 this time last year as he launches into turn 1 after another practice start.
Yeah, really subtle spying going on there from Red Bull.
Yeah, up close.
Phones out, taking photos of the Ferrari there. But yeah, slightly insecure times for Sebastian Vettel.
I do wonder if he'll stay there next year. I think a lot will depend on the first half of this year. He needs to bounce back. Otherwise, when you're on the back foot in a team, you just don't feel loved anymore. And he likes to feel. Everyone likes to feel loved. And he's been,
as a general rule.
As a rule, I assume, as a rule of thumb. But he's been at that team. He's really lifted it since he joined from Red Bull. Won on his second race in Malaysia 2015.
Yeah.
The team loved him. He was the main man. They still do, and they still want him to carry on. But Leclerc seems to be the new focus. And when that's the case, it makes it a little bit harder on the other side of the garage. And that's why I think Ricciardo left to join Renault, a new project. It's early days, and maybe Vettel can come back and really stamp his authority on the team. But it's the kind of thing that does make you consider your options.
Where do the updates go as well? If you're Ferrari and you've got one parts ready for one car. We've seen the controversy that can cause with Sebastian Vettel being favoured over Mark Webber in the past. Are they going to pick the guy with the contract? Are they going to pick the guy who's ahead on the grid? Are they going to ahead in the championship? Are they going to pick, who are they going to go for? Because if you're not putting the development parts on Vettel's car, you're saying no to a 4-time world champion.
Yeah, difficult. It's that's one of the things that, last year we also saw a lot of other tactical things. The slipstreaming was something that Sebastian Vettel got very annoyed about in Monza, where it was particularly prevalent.
Yeah.
Also Baku, and more with these massively draggy Formula 1 cars, following your teammate is the easiest one to do in qualifying, can be beneficial. When we get to Baku, maybe Montreal, they'll have to rotate. They can't favour Charles Leclerc. It would be similar madness to them favouring Sebastian Vettel at the start of last year, and I'm sure Mercedes will alternate at the start of the year, as Ferrari should, until one driver appears to have a better chance to win the title. But there's a lot of political decisions that Ferrari and Matteo Binotto, team boss, has got to come to and keep everyone happy. It's not always easy.
Do Ferrari have a question to answer on strategy? Because doing the commentary for F1 TV's PLC last year, we get a lot more team radio with that coverage, and a lot of the time you do hear Vettel debating the strategy before he's come in. Now, I know we heard Lewis a lot last year going, I'm not sure this is going to work, before then usually going on to make it work. But there seems to be far more of a debate between Vettel on the radio when maybe a 50-50 strategy call is made. Is that something Ferrari really need to tighten up?
Well, I think you get the same from Hamilton as well. Overall, Mercedes probably was slightly stronger on strategy than Ferrari last year. I think it cost Ferrari some points, maybe a race win. Off the top of my head, Charles Leclerc in Austria, starting on the wrong tyre, pitting maybe too early as well, and getting jumped by Max Verstappen that day in the closing stages. But Hamilton's also questioning the strategy. In Singapore, they got undercut. Mercedes didn't get it right, Ferrari did that day. Brazil, Hamilton was demanding the undercut then, and it worked. So a good driver's always got his finger on the pulse with strategy. The strategists are clever, they've got software and systems in place that help them, but the driver can read the race, know what's going on with the tyres. Fundamentally, when you're driving and you get out the car at the end of the race, I've had it before where sometimes you're scratching your head and you guys thinking, guys, what were you hoping for? What was that all about?
Yeah.
And you're giving your best for an hour and a half, and then you just think, we've just lost this down to strategy and making a poor decision on the hoof. There's so much pressure, it's tough. But
as a driver, do you openly say, come on, what was this? Or would you be diplomatic in the way that you would have it explained to you in the team briefing? How would that manifest itself?
You don't want to offend anyone. Yeah. Everyone's trying to do their best. You're a team.
Yeah.
So you don't want to come back in and be like, what was that? That was rubbish. But you need to understand what goes right and wrong. Likewise, every driver makes mistakes through the year. You could say, look, that was my fault, as we heard drivers do, particularly Charles Leclerc, very vocal when he hit the wall or whatever in Baku. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes the strategist or certain people in the team, for example, the strategist, they don't know necessarily what they could have done better, but then the drivers can say,